Among them is, where is Earth? Is it the center of all things? No, it's not even a significant planet in orbit around an ordinary star in the corner of an ordinary galaxy, one of 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And so here we are saying, let's search for life in the universe, intelligent life like us.
What was around before the universe? I don't know. Must have been something, God. So they got to stick in God where we're not there yet. And I just say, we got top people working on that.
You are more likely to believe that God cured you, this invisible force, creator of the universe, cured you, than that you had 3 idiot doctors diagnose you.
I forget who it was, he coined the phrase physics envy.
Yes.
And I think this shows itself in lots of fields, perhaps less so in biology than others. So what we're going to try to do is to have a conversation between a biologist, an evolutionary biologist, and an astrophysicist, a kind of mutual tutorial without a chairman to get in the way. And I thought we might begin by noting that what we can see with our sense organs is an extremely narrow band of what there is to see, and this is particularly so with the visual sense. And we can see a tiny narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, the rainbow. But the rainbow's width is tiny compared to the vast expanse of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I see that as a kind of symbol for how limited our understanding of the universe is as well, because after all, we are evolved beings who evolved to understand the interactions between medium-sized objects moving at medium speeds. And this ill-equipped our brains to understand the very small, quantum theory, and the very large, which I suppose is covered by relativity. So I find myself as a mere biologist baffled by some of the things that physicists talk about. And just to throw out one example, in the expanding universe, we are told, and I have to believe it, that everywhere is, as it were, the same as everywhere else. There's no one place which is the edge of the universe. How can that be?
Well, Richard, first of all, you said you're told it, so you have to believe it. I will never require you to believe anything.
Good for you. Well done.
It will only ever be about how compelling is the evidence to you. But you started with our sensory organs and landed in the expanding universe. Can I take us back to the organs and then perhaps land in the universe?
Yes.
The urge to think of our senses as being powerful or good is strong, because first, that's all we have. Second, we like having nice thoughts about ourselves rather than miserable, depressing thoughts. So we're prone to walk around celebrating, for example, the power of sight or of taste or of smell. When, of course, when you really want to smell something, you bring a dog and they smell. Their nose smells much better than your nose smells. I was going to say the dog smells better than you, but that would insult you. So their nose smells. So we already know that our senses are feeble, and we reach to other creatures in the animal kingdom, cite them as having better examples of our sight, of our taste, of our smell. But little did people know much before a century and a half ago that our sense of vision is limited only, as Richard said, to the colors of the rainbow. And it's quite extraordinary to realize that, for example, beyond red, there's something called infrared. And beyond infrared, there are microwaves. And beyond microwaves, there are radio waves. Go the other direction, you go beyond violet, ultraviolet. Beyond that, X-rays, gamma rays. Energy goes up as you approach gamma rays, with dramatic consequences if you have gamma ray exposure, by the way. Of course, we all know you turn big, green, and ugly, as the Hulk had experienced. But the point is, the visible light part of that spectrum is a tiny slice, and the universe doesn't only communicate with us through that slice, as we had taken for granted for so long. Most of the history of the telescope, which is itself an extension of our eyes, extended the power of our eyes, but not the range of our eyes. And it wasn't until we first understood maybe we're missing something in the 19th century. The 20th century came decade by decade, new telescopes in each newly discovered band of light. And only then did we learn about black holes in the universe, or remarkable, violent forces operating in the centers of galaxies discovered by radio telescopes. So, yeah, we're practically blind out there, and it's humbling, by the way, but that's the whole point of the methods and tools of science, to not only extend your senses in the domain in which you understand, but to take them to places they've never been before. On top of that, we have methods and tools that detect things that are not even extensions of your senses. You have no clue what the magnetic field is around your body right now. You have no clue whether or not you're being bathed in ionizing radiation right now. You'll eventually figure that out as limbs start falling off, but while it's happening, you actually don't know. And there are other things that are more subtle, like polarization of light. So when I think of the scientist's toolkit, especially the astrophysicist's toolkit, it's all about how many different senses can you bring to bear, technological senses can you bring to bear on decoding the universe. One of the things we've discovered, now getting to your horizon question, we look around the universe and it looks like we're in the center. What an ego-supporting concept that is. You can either go around continuing to think that, feeling good about yourself, or study the problem and learn that in an expanding universe where the speed of light is finite at 186,000 miles per second, forgive me using miles per second.
I prefer miles.
You do? You got that on tape? An Oxford professor.
No, it's true. Nobody talks about kilometers in Britain.
Oh, good. All right. So we share not only most of our language, we share miles still. And inchworms, what do they call them? They're not centimeter worms, right? They're inchworms.
We don't have that sort of stuff in Britain. That's Europe.
Of course, Britain is not Europe, as we're constantly reminded. That's right. Here we have the English breakfast and the continental breakfast.
Yes, that's
They're
right.
very different breakfasts that you can order here. So this horizon problem is actually quite simple. And rather than explain the full-up nature of it, let me just give a simple example that is entirely analogous. When you're a ship at sea and you look out, your horizon in every direction is the same distance from you. It depends on your height above the sea level. That's why ship decks are high. They see farther beyond the curvature of the earth than you do just standing on the main deck. So your horizon is a perfect circle centered on you. You can conclude that is the extent of the entire earth, or you can imagine, suppose I'm in another spot. Well, that horizon is still true for whoever happens to be in the middle of it, but now you've moved to a new place, and you will see a horizon corresponding with that spot. And so everybody has a horizon at sea, yet no one at any time is thinking that that's the full extent of the ocean or the full extent of the earth. We have a horizon in the universe, so does the Andromeda galaxy. The galaxies with names that look like phone numbers. If you travel to those galaxies, they will see the edge of the universe now in 3 dimensions, in every direction, at the same distance from them, just as we see for ourselves.
Human senses are weak. We see only a tiny slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, while reality includes infrared, radio waves, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. Science admits that limitation and builds tools to correct it. Religion does the opposite. It asks people to trust ancient claims without testable evidence. Christianity even praises belief without seeing in John 20:29. That may sound spiritual, but it trains people to accept claims before proof. Science moves forward because it demands better evidence.
That does it for me, provided that the horizon is that which we are capable of seeing. I could follow that if you said that for any part of the universe, the horizon is the bit before the expanding universe has disappeared over the horizon.
Yes.
Which means it's no longer visible.
Yes.
But it's still there. even though we can't detect it.
It's true with the ocean when you're at sea.
Yeah, but is anybody on my side here?
You want it to be a harder problem than it is. I'm just simply saying, so here you go. The radius to our horizon is about 14 billion light years.
Got it, okay. Yeah.
If we sat here or returned to this spot a billion years from now, that horizon will be 15 billion light years away.
Yep.
It's actually an expanding horizon because the light from 15 billion light years away will have had time to reach us. Right now, it's still en route.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, but beyond the 14 billion year...
The problem is the universe wasn't born yet.
Yeah, okay.
That's the problem.
I know.
Okay? So you can't see the universe before it existed.
So why doesn't somebody...
Invent a kind of telescope that can?
No. Okay, I'm getting out of my depth here. Let's get back to...
No, just to clarify.
Okay.
Just to clarify. So it takes light time to reach us, and the universe hasn't been here forever. When you combine those two facts, you get an edge of the universe. And so the universe has been here for 14 billion years. The farthest thing that could send us any information is 14 billion light years away.
I get that, but what about the guys who are on the edge of what we can see? How can they see beyond the other side?
Oh, because here's an interesting point.
Okay.
We don't know whether or not the entire universe is infinite.
Okay.
And our horizon is, the universe could be twice our horizon or infinitely larger than our horizon. Same with the ocean. You don't know how much bigger the ocean is than your horizon is. You can keep sort of wandering around. Maybe you'll hit land, as we've done, of course. So now you go there. If the universe is really, really big, that will be the center of their own horizon. And whatever the age of the universe is for them at that time, that will be the radius to their horizon.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make a remark. You drew the analogy of the sense of smell, what a poor sense of smell we have. It's a fascinating fact that although dogs, for example, have a much better sense of smell than we have, as you mentioned.
That's what I say, sense of smell. That's what I should say. Not that dogs smell better, but they have a better sense of smell.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
But we have the genes that would once enabled our ancestors to have as good a sense of smell as dogs. But the genes have mostly been turned off. And so we have vestiges, we have historical relics of those genes. And it's like your hard disk on your computer that's cluttered up with remains of old chapters you've written here and there and things that have now been cut off. Those genes have been turned off, but they're still there.
Isn't that the premise of X-Men?
I don't know.
They're human, but they have a genetically different genes are turned on and off within them, giving them special powers. So are you suggesting the day might arise where we go inside the human genome and flick the dip switches on and off and we come out as Superman?
Put it this way, it's not as unlikely as it might have appeared before we realized that we do have those genes still. You don't have to import the genes from dogs, although the technology of this coming century may enable that to happen.
I'd still rather it be the dog that sniffs the bomb than me.
Yes. Well, we'll probably have robots to do this sniffing. So what about this point about the difficulty of maybe I chose a too easy an example. The brain, how is it that the human brain, which evolved to do really rather mundane things...
To not get eaten by lions, yeah.
To not get eaten by lions in the Pleistocene of Africa, because as you'll learn this evening, we are all Africans. We all come from Africa, and our brains were shaped by natural selection on the African plains to do things that involve objects like this. I mean, medium-sized objects. Macroscopic objects that don't move anywhere near the speed of light. It's a tremendous tribute to our species that we are capable, at least some of us are capable, of understanding things that don't belong on that ordinary macroscopic, slow-moving scale.
Yeah, and so therein is the value to us, not only of the methods and tools of science, but also of the language of the universe that we call mathematics. Remarkable thing, a point first advanced by Eugene Wigner, that math has an unreasonable utility in the universe since we just invented it out of our heads. You don't discover math under a rock, as you might find a grub's. You invent it out of whole cloth. Yet, it empowers us to provide accurate and predictive descriptions and understandings of the universe. And so what comes of this is you learn to abandon your senses. And that's a line from the Broadway musical, Phantom of the Opera. Abandon your... never mind. Sorry. So I want to write Broadway lyrics one day in another life. You train yourself to abandon your senses because you recognize how they can fool you into thinking one thing is true that is not. You abandon them. You use your tools that do the measuring to say, okay, that's the reality. Then you make a mathematical model of that you can manipulate logically, because math is all about the logical extension of one point to another, and then you can make new discoveries about the world that, frankly, you'll just have to get used to. No longer do you have the right is not the right word, but no longer do you have no longer are you justified saying that idea in science is not true because it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So nobody cares about your senses.
Yes.
Your senses came out, forget the Serengeti, just growing up. As a kid, something's in your hand, you let go of it, it falls. You tip a glass, water spills. You are assembling a rule book for how nature works in the macroscopic world. The microscope takes you smaller than that, the telescope takes you bigger, and other laws of physics manifest themselves in those regimes that you have no life experience reckoning. And so it's math that allows you to take these incremental steps beyond the capacity of your senses and perhaps even the capacity of your mind. Yes, it's the mind that's taking the steps, but your mind was not deducing that by just looking at the world with your senses. It was helped out. It was aided by these tools that we invented.
Religion keeps trying to make human intuition the judge of reality. That fails fast. The universe does not care what feels obvious to a human brain shaped for survival, fear, food, and danger. Evolution explains why our minds are limited. Math and measurement explain why science escapes those limits. Christianity asks people to trust revelation, miracles, and ancient authority. Science asks the harder question, can the claim survive evidence?
And at some point, when you get so used to doing the mathematics, it becomes kind of intuitive in rather the way that I'm told that pilots who get used to flying a plane, and they start to feel the wings of the plane as being almost part of their own bodies. They develop an intuitive feeling.
No, so how many is this common? Is this a common sensory perception of pilots?
I think it is. It's a common thing. I think that when people get skilled at using micromanipulators, where they're using their hands, and what's actually going on is tiny little minuscule movements going on under a microscope.
So it becomes their hands.
It becomes their hands.
The plane becomes the pilot.
Exactly.
Or the pilot becomes.
And just as you said, the telescope is an extension of the eyes.
I knew this. My advisor in graduate school, one of my advisors, I spoke to him one morning. He was doing research on star clusters that have these huge orbits around the center of the galaxy. He said he had a dream the night before where he was one of these clusters, and he was orbiting the center of the galaxy. I thought that was so cool.
Yes.
If you start becoming in your cosmic dream, I want to have those dreams, because then you think creatively about what remains to be discovered.
Absolutely. I sometimes wonder about whether surgeons, maybe even surgeons of the present, who are using micromanipulators inside a body. I mean, something like when they stick that thing up you and it goes.
They stick a lot of things up you. The last I've heard.
And I mean, already you have surgeons driving an endoscope inside and turning left to get round the intestine, turning right. I imagine the time will come when a surgeon will have virtual reality goggles on, and the surgeon will actually feel herself to be inside the body of the patient, and will turn left and will literally walk across the room, and that will be translated into the micromanipulators, the endoscope moving.
This sounds really cool. I like this idea, and you know what you'd have to do? You would have to alter the dominant laws of physics in that regime. Because if you're small enough, a la Fantastic Voyage, the 1960s film, when you're that small, capillary action and surface tension and all manners of other forces take over.
Yes.
And that then becomes your new reality, your new sensory
That's right.
standards.
You would have to become sensitive to surface tension. Darcy Thompson made the point in, I think, 1919, that to world of an insect, gravity is negligible.
Who cares?
What matters is surface tension.
That's right.
And you'd have to be that. I never thought of that. But what I do
That's because you didn't see the movie Bug's Life.
Okay.
In Bug's Life, they serve up a cocktail to an insect that goes up to a bar, and all the bartender does is pour out water from a spigot and hand him the bowl of water, like that. And the surface, this was brilliant of the cartoonists here,
that would be very good.
Of the illustrators. And then he sticks a straw into the sphere and sucks it out. No receptacle needed. You got to get out more.
Well, I imagine my surgeon of the future being armed with a virtual, saw, one of those, what are those things you cut trees down with? Bandsaw.
Bandsaws, yeah.
And what's really going on is a tiny little microscalpel inside, but the surgeon is wielding an axe and is all done by virtual reality.
But I've got a question back to you. So I lose sleep over this, and I've always wanted to be in the company of a leading biologist to get insight into this. As an astrophysicist, we've seen throughout time the hubris that comes with any discovery that gets made, or the hubris that prevents the acceptance of a discovery that might demote your sense of self from whatever you previously imagined it to be. Among them is, where is Earth? Is it the center of all things? No, it's not even a significant planet in orbit around an ordinary star in the corner of a ordinary galaxy, one of 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And so here we are saying, let's search for life in the universe, intelligent life like us. Well, who are we to say that we're intelligent? I mean, I pose that not as a joke question, but it's a very serious question. We define ourselves to be intelligent in ways that no other creature can rival. Okay, now what do we credit that intelligence to? So you look at the genome, and let's take the chimp. I guess that's a really close relative of ours. And we have, high 90% identical, indistinguishable DNA. And the chimp does not build the Hubble telescope, and the chimp does not compose symphonies. So we must then declare that everything we say about us that is intelligent is found in that 1.5% difference in DNA. Is that a fair statement to make? Okay. Let me invert that question. If the genetic difference between humans and chimps is that small, maybe the difference in our intelligence is also that small.
Yeah.
Maybe the difference between stacking boxes and reaching a banana, putting up an umbrella when it rains, whatever are these rudimentary things a chimp does that the primatologists roll them forward and boast about, which of course our toddlers can do, maybe the difference between that and the Hubble telescope is as small as that difference in DNA. Because I pose the question, suppose there was another life form on Earth or elsewhere, that in that same sort of vector, that 1.5% difference we are to chimps, suppose they were 1.5% different from us. They would then roll the smartest of us in front of their humatologists and say, there's Hawking, oh, this one is slightly smarter than the rest of them because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head. Like little Timmy over here.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we're just blithering idiots in the presence of even a trivially smarter species than us. So therefore, who are we to even assert that, number one, we are intelligent and we're looking for others at least as intelligent as us out there to talk to? By the way, is there any other species on Earth that we can talk to? Can we have a conversation with a chimp? That has nearly identical DNA, and I don't think we can actually say, hey, what movie do you want to see tonight? You don't have that conversation with a chimp. Yet somehow we want to believe that an alien on another planet that's not even based on DNA, and even if it is, it's not nothing like us, that we could communicate with it.
Yeah.
I'm screaming at you, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean,
so what do you, so there.
Well, I'm all for, yeah, I'm all
Are we
for,
as stupid as I'm saying?
Christianity puts humans at the center of the story. Made in God's image, morally special, spiritually chosen. Science keeps pulling that ego apart. Earth is not the center. Our sun is ordinary. Our galaxy is one among billions. Even our intelligence may be a thin advantage, not a divine crown. Humans and chimpanzees share very close genetic ancestry, and small genetic differences can create huge changes in behavior and ability. That is evolution, not special creation. Religion flatters human pride. Science forces humility.
We have the survivalist hard drive, don't we? How much do you defer to the place you're at in lieu of your survival?
The survivalist hard drive operates in the moment. I don't want to die now. It doesn't operate for 100 years from now or 200 years from now. If I tell you I found an asteroid and it's going to take us out in 500 years, you say, let somebody else worry about it. So you're not thinking about the species, you're only thinking about your own ass.
And I don't know that feels selfish. It feels in me. I don't know, it seems woven into my DNA.
Yeah, is it bad or is it just the reality of it?
Yes.
And I can tell you, my access to people's sentiments like that came through the fact that I received these letters from people. Mm-hmm. It's angst. Someone said, I heard the world's going to end in 2012, and as a kid, the adults are saying, you remember the whole 2012 scare, or even the 2000 scare, the Y2K. Mm-hmm. There are people who are afraid, they don't want to die. And so who do they turn to? And I'm an astrophysicist, I have some sense of the universe. And so I get these letters from them asking about how the universe matters in their lives, particularly people who are in search of meaning. Maybe they didn't get it from whatever else they did in their arc of life. And so this is an intensely interpersonal collection, just for that reason. Yes. The reason that you started saying here, how's this going to end? What does it all mean? What are we doing?
Yes.
So
they talk about not traveling the planet now. I've seen that come up lately, where people say we should cut down on our travel to preserve the planet. And I don't want to do a corollary on if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, does it exist? But if the planet is there and I can't ever go see it, is it
really a planet to you?
Well, I'm just saying, what is the definition of a planet?
Yeah, so I think the issue is not that we shouldn't travel, it's that we should find another way to travel that doesn't destroy the planet. Why be defeatist about what it is you should or shouldn't do? Why not be inventive and innovative? And in so doing, you come up with solutions undreamt of by the previous generation. Thomas Malthus, who said population will outstrip food supply because population is growing exponentially and food is only growing arithmetically, so we'll all starve to death one day. And he had no idea that science would be brought to bear on animal husbandry and plant crops.
Yes.
And so
breakthroughs.
If things kept the way they were back in 1780 or whenever he wrote, we'd all be dead now. Yeah. But we have innovations, we have creative people who say, I don't want to die, so let me figure this out. We now have more food grown on less land by fewer people than ever in the history of civilization. Mm-hmm. The fact that people are starving in the world is not because there's not enough food, it's a distribution political problem. It's not because we're running out of food.
I want to talk to you about science being settled. I think that was a bad, I don't know, Gore to me is a civilian. I think that was a bad play saying science is settled.
He's being broadly speaking. So what you say is there are things that science has discovered that are objectively true. Now move on to the next problem, okay? you jump out this window, you will fall, and we know exactly the rate at which you will gain speed and likely what will happen to you when you hit the ground.
Newton was a suicide hotline operator.
Exactly. We had that soon. We got Newton. Newton's laws work. Okay, they don't all of a sudden stop working just because time moves on. So when you in science, if you've done an experiment enough times, not just you, because you could be biased in your own laboratory, but somebody else with using a different wall current, somebody who has a different belief system than you, they design a different set of experiments to test the same idea. If you all get about the same result,
It's Rashomon.
you got something there. And if you got something there, that's what becomes the objective truth. This is why science is so valuable and so important to the progress of civilization. So yes, there are settled scientific objective truths. On the frontier, nothing is settled. You go to a science conference, we're duking it out, people screaming, hooting and hollering, and yeah, because everyone is passionate. You can't do anything that long with no rewards, without passion. Scientists, they're paid well, but not crazy well. I mean,
well, I love that contentiousness. I love brilliant men locking antlers. I'm a little more worried when I read the back and forth between Phil Jones and Michael Mann, those East Anglia memos. I know people, I bring that up and people chortle and they go, well, you're over-interpreting those. These are things they didn't think were going to be seen, and quite frankly, they didn't resonate well when they talked about the climate, the temperatures going down.
What two people say to each other is irrelevant. What matters is the peer-reviewed research results. And never is there 100% of all scientists who agree on anything. The good thing about science is that the player is irrelevant. What matters is the data. What matters is the consistency of results. So you look around and someone does an ice core through Greenland glaciers and they get some result about what the oxygen or CO2 was 100,000 years ago. Somebody does an ice core in Antarctica. They have nothing to do with each other except they're 12,000 miles apart. They're getting a similar answer. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's the migration patterns that are changing for insects. For flying insects. Oh my gosh, they're migrating earlier rather than later. And you put all this together, the botany, the biology, the geology, the atmospheric chemistry, the oceanic research. You put all that and all leaning in this direction right here. And if you're going to lean this way, I hope you don't have power over legislation, because that could be the beginning of the end of our civilization.
I want to talk about faith and science. Now,
as you correctly noted, it's a big, it drives a lot of people to send me letters. And so there's quite a sampling of those exchanges in here, not only from people of Christian faith, but Muslims. There's a letter from a Jewish woman who's trying to raise her kid, but the kid is in denial of the Torah. And she's wondering what to do about that, because she's sending him to Hebrew school, but it's not sticking. And he believes in science, so there's a lot of angst in the letters that I get through there.
I don't even know you're a man of science. I don't know your faith, but can the two coexist peacefully?
Well, they do empirically. So, in the West, about 40% of PhD level trained scientists would claim a personal God as part of their belief system. What I mean by personal God is a God who listens to their prayers, and they think about who is paying attention to them and their needs or wants or desires. So, and they can still publish productive science. So it's factually yes that they can coexist. But there's a caveat. If you're going to dip into your Bible or any religious text and declare that you found something about the Bible that applies to the natural world, and scientific methods get a different result, if you're a betting man, you're not going to bet on the scriptural interpretation. You're going to go with the scientific result. The history of this exercise bears that out. So modern enlightened religious people are perfectly content saying, my Bible, I use it for spiritual fulfillment and enlightenment, not as a science textbook. And Galileo is famous for saying, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go.
Well, I think of Galileo in this back in the 1600s. I guess he jumps on Copernicus's theory of heliocentrism. The next thing you know, he ends up before a Catholic Inquisition board. I'm wondering today, is some of the secular community turned into a latter-day Inquisition.
Well, you
for
can
it.
do that if what you're bringing forth does not have any evidence in support of it, and you want to make laws based on it. Think about what America is. America. We are, I hate to overuse the term melting pot, but look at how diverse we are as a country, with fully practicing fundamentalist Christians, atheists, Muslims, Jews, animists, the political space. We're all here. If you have a belief system that's not anchored in objectively true things, and you rise to power and you make a law that derives from your belief system, now that law has to apply to people that don't share your belief system. What is that? Whereas an objective truth, I've said this before, the good thing about science is true whether or not you believe in it. Okay, and of course I mean objectively established scientific truth, are true whether or not you believe in it. So if you're going to base laws on something, why don't you start there? Because that applies to everybody. I got one here, one of the letters. Someone
And by
said,
the way, the book is Neil deGrasse Tyson, Letters from an Astrophysicist. And I know I'm looking at it as like a shrunken white elements of style, common sense. It is a.
oh, that's nice. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
Right. It's a
well,
very,
I'm just saying, I think there's wisdom to be found. Tell me about the specific
yeah,
letter
so
you
just
were
one
going to
particular
talk to.
case, this is not, doesn't involve religion, but it involves a belief. Someone wrote in and said very politely, Dr. Tyson, do you think there could be a large hairy ape wandering the Pacific Northwest? Okay, so this is like code for, together now, Bigfoot, all right? So I said, well, you know, we think we've discovered all the large mammals. We think we have. There's some animals down bottom of the ocean. We can just, because we don't hang out there. Occasionally one shows up, there's a new one. Most of the animals we're discovering are much smaller and much less. And plus I said, if it's an ape of any kind, it's a mammal and it reproduces sexually, so there's got to be at least two of them. And if there's two of them and they're still around, there got to be some babies.
Yes.
And if they're babies, then you got to find poop somewhere.
Yes.
You don't need the animal, you just need evidence of the animal to convince people. So I said, I find it unlikely. And he writes back and says, for a scientist, I thought you'd be open-minded, but you are so close-minded. And so then it turned out he was angry. And I said, here's what you do. Try to spend more time finding the thing and dragging it into town square than trying to convince people that it exists in the absence of that evidence.
Religion can survive in private belief, but it collapses when it tries to explain the real world or control public policy. If a claim affects everyone, it needs evidence that works for everyone. Prayer, scripture, tradition, and personal conviction do not meet that standard. Science wins because the data can be tested by people who disagree. Ice cores, biology, geology, oceans, and chemistry all point to the same reality. Faith asks for loyalty. Science demands proof.
Why does religion have such a persistent hold on human thought despite all that we know of science?
Yeah, I think there are several ways one can address that question. Let me address it in a consider not long ago when so much of the Western world was the state was the religion. And we have actually moved quite a distance from that compared with 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, the era of the Inquisition and this sort of thing. And so to say that it has such a grip, it has a fraction of the grip that it once did on the operations of human conduct and of society. So the real question is, if implicit in that is, given what we know of science, why would religion still have any grip at all? Not why does it still have a big grip? Because it's not a big grip when you look in the developed world. So, in fact, most of Europe are just, they're whole countries where religion has essentially disappeared entirely. And the countries are not full of violence and, it's just, the assumption that you have to be religious to be moral is a false one. It's empirically false, because you just look around in places where that's the case. So, so that's one fact. And we pull away from that a little. There's plenty of what goes on in religious texts that has tremendous value to how to think about life and how to treat one another. In fact, Jefferson created what was essentially what you can think of as Thomas Jefferson, the Jefferson Bible. I don't know if you ever heard of this. He went through the Bible, and I think both the Old and the New Testaments, and he crossed off everything that was sort of mythical, magical, things that clearly violated known laws of nature, and kept the rest, and said, here is the stuff of the Bible that should have value to any modern person going forward. If you look at people who are religious today, who are not in conflict with science, they have viewed their religious text as a spiritual, something that gives them spiritual support, not as a science textbook. The conflict in society is when you have those who are still religious, who want to use their religious text as their access point to understanding the natural world. And persistent efforts of the past to make that happen have just simply failed. The Bible does not work as a science textbook. In fact, Galileo knew this, and he himself was a religious man. He's famously quoted as saying, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. So on that scale, the conflict comes about when that subset of the religious community feels threatened by scientific discoveries that are different from how they interpret what the natural world should be in the Bible.
I think it's that point where you get to the concept of the God of the gaps. You go, we do not understand this, science takes us so far, but we don't understand anything beyond that. Therefore, that's God. The stuff that we don't get, that's God. And the trouble with that is the moment that you actually go, no, we do understand that now. Is people going, well, did God just go away then? And it goes back, nice simple things like the rainbow. The point where you go, well, the rainbow actually, it's an optical effect. It's not something magic that gets put up in the sky to memorialize the flood.
Plus, did you know that everyone sees a unique rainbow?
No.
That's right. The rainbow is an optical effect for the person who sees it. So if you stand 10 feet to my left, you see a different rainbow than I see. It's a remarkable, fun fact about rainbows.
My favorite fun fact about rainbows is the fact that they were originally believed to have 6 color bands, but that Newton added indigo and violet.
Newton
he liked his 7s.
The number 7. He had the mystical feeling for the number 7. Throws in indigo that no one else sees.
Yeah, nobody, hands up here, who actually goes, indigo, violet, there's the indigo. You don't. You just go purple.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue, purple. But
so another thing about the rainbow, because each rainbow is unique to the viewer, it can only be a rainbow that is exactly face-on to you. You've never seen a rainbow that was like at an oblique angle. Think about it. They're exactly hemispherical in front of you. That's why you can never get to the base of the rainbow. Because that would mean your perspective on it would change. That's what makes it a good place to hide the gold. Okay? In case you didn't know. All right.
Are you outing yourself here as an unbeliever in leprechauns? People have been burned at stakes for that.
Indeed am. Another thing, you mentioned the God of the gaps. In a free society, a free pluralistic society, where the freedom of the expression of religion is constitutionally protected, which is a fundamental part of why America was so attractive to immigrants from around the world, whose religious differences were not being supported in their hometown. I will never be one to tell you what you should believe or what you should not believe. What I will say is that if you want to say that where we don't understand things, that's where God rests, that's where God operates, the God of the gaps argument, because I get asked that all the time. What was around before the universe? I don't know. Must have been something, God. So they got to stick in God where we're not there yet. And I just say, we got top people working on that. It's a current frontier. We're not there yet. And given the history of the moving frontier, where people had previously said, well, God must be operating, we're long past that. Those explanations have come. And so there's no compelling reason to say God did it and then sort of give up and go on to the next problem. My issue with the God of the gaps is that if you feel that way, you should not be writing the science curriculum of a classroom. Okay? That's all. Okay? Because if you do, you are undermining the very process of what science is all about. Because the God of the gaps principle is like it's a philosophy of ignorance, whereas science is a philosophy of discovery. And that's an important distinction between the two. And if you remove that foundation for what builds science, you are undermining the capacity of your culture, of your nation, to compete technologically in the 21st century. So it is not without consequence to have conduct of that way.
The God of the gaps argument is a losing strategy. Every time religion points to mystery and says, that must be God, science eventually moves into that space with a real explanation. The rainbow is a perfect example. Genesis treats it as a divine sign after the flood, but physics shows it comes from light refracting, reflecting, and dispersing through water droplets. Religion turned ignorance into a story. Science turned the same question into knowledge.
An incredible flash of energy and light, though.
And matter and, yeah, all of this, all of the above.
Do you give people who make this case that that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so the track record is so poor that going forward I have essentially zero confidence, near zero confidence that there will be fruitful things to emerge from the effort to reconcile them. So, for example, if you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation. One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer. So what happened was, when science discovers things and you want to stay religious, or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is, you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally, they meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded. And so the educated religious people are perfectly fine with that. It's the fundamentalists who want to say that the Bible is the literal truth of God and want to see the Bible as a science textbook, who are knocking on the science doors of the schools trying to put that content in the science. Enlightened religious people are not behaving that way. They're saying, yes, science is cool, we're good with that, and use the Bible to get your spiritual enlightenment and your emotional fulfillment.
I have known serious religious people, not fundamentalists, who were scared when Carl Sagan opened his series with the words,
"The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be."
That scared them, because they interpret that to mean, then if this is it, there's nothing else, no God and no life after.
For religious people, many people say, well, God is within you. Or God, there are ways that people have shaped this, rather than God as an old gray-bearded man in clouds. So if God is within you, what I'm sure Carl would say, in you, in your mind, and we can measure the neurosynaptic firings when you have a religious experience. We can tell you where that's happening, when it's happening, what you're feeling like at the time. So your mind, of course, is still within the cosmos.
But do you have any sympathy for people who seem to only feel safe in the vastness of the universe you describe in your show, if they can infer a personal God who makes it more hospitable to them, who cares for them?
In this, what we tell ourselves is a free country, which means you should have freedom of thought. I don't care what you think. I just don't. Go think whatever you want. Go ahead. Think that there's one God, 2 gods, 10 gods, or no gods. That is what it means to live in a free country. The problem arises is if you have a religious philosophy that is not based in objective realities that you then want to put in the science classroom. Then I'm going to stand there and say, no, I'm not going to allow you in the science classroom. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just telling you in the science class, you're not doing science. This is not science. Keep it out. That's when I stand up. Otherwise, go ahead. I'm not telling you how to think.
I think you must realize that some people are going to go to your show at the planetarium and they're going to say, aha, those scientists have discovered God, because God, dark matter, is what holds this universe together.
Was that a question?
It's a statement. You know they're going to say that.
So the history of discovery, particularly cosmic discovery, but discovery in general, scientific discovery, is one where at any given moment there's a frontier. And there tends to be an urge for people, especially religious people, to assert that across that boundary into the unknown lies the handiwork of God. This shows up a lot. Newton even said it. He had his laws of gravity and motion, and he was explaining the moon and the planet. He was there. He doesn't mention God for any of that. And then he gets to the limits of what his equations can calculate. So can't quite figure this out. Maybe God steps in and makes it right every now and then. That's where he invoked God. And Ptolemy, he bet on the wrong horse, but he was a brilliant guy. He formulated the geocentric universe with Earth in the middle. This is where we got epicycles and the machinations of the heavens. There was still a mystery to him. He looked up and uttered the following words: when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies. These are the planets going through retrograde and back. The mysteries of the earth. When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery, and in gets invoked God. This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. If that's where you're going to put your God in this world, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God, if God is the mystery of the universe, these mysteries, we're tackling these mysteries one by one. If you're going to stay religious at the end of the conversation, God has to be more to you than just where science has yet to tread. So to the person who says, maybe dark matter is God, if the only reason why you're saying it's because it's a mystery, then get ready to have that undone.
Something I just find astonishing, remarkable. I'm so impressed by this. Are you ready? Here's what happens. Someone is diagnosed. I'm making up a very common example for the purposes of this explanation. Somebody's diagnosed with terminal cancer. The doctor says, you got 6 months to live. You say, you mind if I get a second opinion? Of course, go ahead. Go to a second doctor. You got 5 months to live. Go to a third doctor. 7 months to live. So basically, you're going to be dead in 6 months, plus or minus, okay? What happens? You're alive a year later, okay? You're alive 2 years later. 3 years later, the cancer's in remission. 5 years later, it's gone from your body. You happen to have been a religious person, and over that time you were praying. People were praying for you. Here's what's astonishing, is that if you are that person, you are more likely to believe that God cured you, this invisible force, creator of the universe, cured you, than that you had 3 idiot doctors diagnose you. I am astonished by this fact. The American Medical Association, is that what they call it, AMA? Has got to be the most powerful organization in the world because no one questions those diagnoses. They'll credit whatever else was going on because they were sure they were going to die. And I can tell you this, I taught physics to pre-med students who became doctors. Not all of them are smart, I assure you. Not only that, they're all trained in the same system. So 3 separate doctors that all went through the same system of medical schools, that's not actually 3 different opinions. It's the same opinion, just nuanced by what the person had for breakfast that morning. It's not 3 different opinions. Now, just to confirm this, there's a colleague of mine in the front row. Have you taught physics to pre-medical students? You have not, so I don't have a second opinion on what this is. But, so, I'm just impressed that it's impossible for people to think that they just had idiot doctors diagnose them, or that it was a diagnostic failure. I'm sorry, say again? I failed more pre-med students than I failed pre-law. Okay, we have a Physics 101 professor here who said he's failed more students who are pre-med than those who are pre-law. Yeah, it's astonishing. It's astonishing who ends up being our doctors.
The Bible fails the moment people treat it like a science book. Genesis describes creation in days. Revelation 6:13 says, stars fall to earth like figs from a tree. Matthew 24:29 says, the stars will fall from heaven. That is not astronomy. Stars are massive suns, many larger than our own, and they cannot fall onto earth like glowing pebbles. So when science exposes the error, religion retreats into, it was symbolic. That is not truth. That is damage control. So here is the question. If Scripture only becomes symbolic after science proves the literal reading wrong, why should anyone trust it as a guide to reality? Comment your thoughts below, and make sure to like and subscribe for more.